here's a little hypothetical example. It comes from a lovely book by Hook called How to Tell the Statisticians from the Liars, I believe, remembering correctly. So he has a hypothetical example where you have three mechanical golfers. I'm not a golfer, but I understand that the point of golf is to get a low score. So here's golfer 1, and golfer 1, mechanical golfer, always scores a 72. No matter what happens, always scores a 72. Golfer 2, mechanical golfer 2, scores a 69 25% of the time and a 73 75% of the time. Okay? On average, what does golfer 2 do? Well, 25% of 69 plus 75% of 73 turns out to be 72 again. So on average, golfer 1 and golfer 2 do the same. Okay, their average score is the same. Golfer 3 gets a 70 half the time and a 74 half the time. Again, golfer 3's average is a 72. So if you wanted to summarize how these golfers did by a single number, on average, they're the same. Okay. What happens when they play each other? So on average, they're the same. What happens when golfer 2 plays golfer 1? Okay, golfer 2 wins whenever golfer 2 gets a 69. Golfer 2 loses whenever golfer 2 gets a 73. Right? So golfer 2 is going to lose 75% of the time. Okay? What happens when golfer 3 plays golfer 2? Sorry? 50-50 chance of winning or losing? Is that true?
3 and 1, you said?
Okay, we need an extra assumption here, which is that in some sense their scores don't depend on each other. The technical assumption is independence, which we'll talk about later when we're doing probability. But we know that what happened, okay, so we've got golfer 1 beats golfer 2 75% of the time. Golfer 2, what happens when golfer 2 plays golfer 3? Certainly, whenever golfer 2 gets a 69, golfer 2 wins, because that's lower than all of the scores that golfer 3 can get. Okay? But when golfer 2 scores a 73, that's still lower than a 74. Right? So if golfer 2 gets a 73 and golfer 3 gets a 74, golfer 2 still wins. Right? Sorry? Am I saying it right? Yeah, okay. All right. So how often is that going to happen? Well, again, this independence thing comes in, which we're not going to talk about very much. But basically, if these scores don't have anything to do with each other, then of the times that golfer 2 scores a 73, half the time golfer 3 gets a 70, half the time golfer 3 gets a 74. That's what independence means. Okay? So of the times golfer 2 gets a 73, half of those times golfer 2 is going to win. Okay? So golfer 2 is going to win 25% of the time plus half of 75% of the time. Does that make sense? Okay, half of 75 is what? 37.5 plus 25, 62.5% of the time, something like that. I can't add, occupational hazard, especially on TV. Okay. All right, so golfer 1 beats golfer 2 75% of the time. Golfer 2 beats golfer 3 62.5% of the time, right? More than half the time. What happens when golfer 3 plays golfer 1? They play even, right? Okay. So he beats him, they play even. Right? Variability matters. That's the point here. You can't tell what's going to happen just from knowing how they play on average.